A couple was overjoyed when they decided to start their family the non-conventional way. They began their journey as foster parents, and after a few roadblocks, they welcomed an adorable baby into their hearts and home. But 10 days later, an unfortunate incident turned everything topsy-turvy. Tiffany was 19 when she crossed paths with James, who was 4 years her senior. After being together for a year and a half, they tied the knot and couldn't be happier to begin a new chapter in their lives. 12 years later, in 2019, the couple decided to embrace parenthood through adoption. After much thought, Tiffany and James signed up for foster care and enrolled in training sessions, hoping to earn their license as soon as possible. After everything was finalized, the couple received their first placement in June 2020, which only lasted 8 weeks. Although things didn't go as planned, and the aftermath deeply upset the Northeastern Ohio couple, they refused to give up. About 4 weeks later, they received an unexpected call from the caseworker about a 6-year-old boy needing temporary placement. Seeing it as a sign, Tiffany and James agreed to take in the child, whose name was Braxton. At the time, the duo didn't know that their temporary settlement could become permanent. Based on their experience, they knew what they were walking into, and they became Braxton's full-time foster parents. Soon afterward, they learned that Braxton's time in foster care was over, and he had nowhere to go. It wasn't long before the couple decided to adopt the boy and began working on the legal procedures. But it was easier said than done. The paperwork dragged on and ended up taking 8 months. After constant delays, Tiffany and James heaved a sigh of relief when Braxton's social worker called them in July 2021, telling them they could move forward with adoption. As was expected, the couple was over the moon and couldn't wait to make things official. But unimaginable news shortly after overshadowed their happiness. James was diagnosed with cancer, a heartbreaking revelation that ambushed Tiffany a few days before. Although her husband looked healthy on the surface, he was slowly deteriorating from within, having lost 50 pounds in a few months. After Tiffany noticed a lump in her husband's chest, they consulted the doctor, and he was diagnosed with melanoma. A month later, James underwent a surgical procedure to remove the tumor, which had grown massively. But while the couple hoped their worst nightmare was over, they were in for a surprise. James took some more tests 3 weeks later, and the results confirmed that the cancer had returned. Even more heartbreaking was that it made surgery nearly impossible, news that shattered Tiffany's heart into a million pieces. In the days to follow, her husband's health rapidly declined. James became so weak that he couldn't walk and had to use a wheelchair. Meanwhile, things improved on the adoption front, and they welcomed Braxton officially on December 5, 2021. The virtual adoption hearing allowed James to attend the important event without traveling. In the following days, James' health declined, and the doctors told him nothing more could be done. In a blog entry from September 3, 2021, a heartbroken Tiffany shared how her world fell apart when she learned her husband could no longer participate in the clinical trial. She wrote, "Then, James got a call. His cancer had already returned, and because of that, he could no longer participate in the trial. What followed were 3 months of pulling out all the stops to try to save James's life." In an earlier blog post, Tiffany shared how she and her father sat in the clinic, waiting for James' tumor removal. "As you know, things didn't work out that way. We didn't know then that the surgery only bought James more time," added Tiffany. With a heavy heart, Tiffany began overseeing arrangements for her husband to be moved to hospice. But everything went downhill when she received a call from the hospital after Braxton left for school. Tiffany hurried to the hospital and stayed beside her husband until the last minute. On December 15, 2021, 10 days after Braxton's adoption and 10 days before Christmas, James took his last breath, leaving his family forever crippled. Regarding her immense trauma, loss, and insurmountable grief, Tiffany expressed, "I was now thrown into a life I never wanted or expected. In my wildest nightmares, I never thought I would become a single mom and widow at 34 years old." Everything changed for Tiffany, and her moment of long-awaited joy also became a point of poignant loss and deep sorrow. She was left without the love of her life, with a child who needed her love, care, and support more than anything. The distraught woman continued to share blog entries, translating her thoughts and feelings into words. On her 15th wedding anniversary, Tiffany went down memory lane, recalling sweet moments from her honeymoon. She penned, "I can't help but wonder where we would be if James was still here." In another blog post from June 2022, Tiffany described having lived 6 months without her better half. She reflected on her life with James and said she sometimes had difficulty telling apart reality from the fragments of her thoughts. A pain-stricken Tiffany lamented, "6 months of a different life, a life without you in it. There was no one quite like you, and I will probably never come close to meeting someone like you again in this lifetime." Undoubtedly, it's anything but easy to move on after the loss of a beloved, and we pray for Tiffany's peace of mind and heart. We're sure James will always watch over his wife and son from the heavens. Please keep this family in your heartfelt thoughts and prayers.